One of the concepts I want to always talk about is healthy sleep. I know it seems so basic, but if I, had to take a poll with the ladies that are listening to this, or even I always ask my patients, how well do you sleep at night? Are you sleeping great, eight hours a night? I would say almost 3/4 of them say that they don't sleep well. And this is huge because your body cannot heal and repair if we're not getting that amazing sleep that we're supposed to get, right? So it's a huge problem. So reason why it's a problem is because I've listed melatonin right here. It's a powerful antioxidant for your brain, helps your body heal and repair. So without complete darkness and without 4 hours of complete darkness, that's when you finally start to make melatonin. So people that have interrupted sleep never get to make that. And reason why that's so important is that basically it's a precursor to make other hormones. And one of them is called melanocyte stimulating hormone. And this hormone is huge because it's protective against autoimmune, cancers, and degenerative disorders. So the first one we want to talk about, is make sure that you are sleeping in complete darkness. No ambient light should be there at all. The next thing you want to do is set your circadian rhythms. And how you do this is it's something simple, but it's to get first morning light. You want to go outside, ideally before 10, to get that first morning light and without glasses and contacts. All right. So the next thing you can do is to make sure your last meal is 4 hours prior to sleep. I know that's difficult for us that have really busy lives and work a little bit later, but it really is optimum 4 hours to sleep because your body, it interferes that healing and repairing and then making melatonin if your body's still worried about digesting your food. The other biohack that you can do is to wear blue blocker glasses. Some of you may wear them, in the daytime if you're on the computer all the time, but they make specific nighttime blue blocker glasses that are actually amber colored. And what happens is if we're on their tablets or phones or TV screen, it further disrupts that, sleep cycle. The last thing too to really help with that is to have optimum room temperature. You want to really make sure that your room temperature is 65 degrees. We want to talk about biohacks of exercise. We've known forever that exercise, we could all list about 20 benefits just right off the top of our head. I'm going to go quickly over reformer Pilates, resistance training, something called HIIT, KATA, AllCore, and then the power plate. So we've had a reformer Pilates. This is one of my favorite forms of exercise because it's versatile. We've had this studio for 22 years in our practice, and it's been a great adjunct to it. The reformer can do with your help, right? About 2,000 different exercises, and it uses spring tension, as resistance. There's other forms of exercise, of course, that use resistance, and that's your traditional weight training with cables, free weights, then of course your TRX, which is, suspension training. All of those are really great. But how do we supercharge those benefits of exercise? So let's go on to the next one. Some of you might be doing this already. It's called HIIT, or high intensity interval training. What it is, it's repeated hard bouts of workout. I mean, you give it everything you have for about 20 seconds, and then you allow yourself to recover for 40 seconds to a minute. And this could be done on a treadmill, elliptical, a bike, doing certain exercises like burpees or lunges. And then you usually do this about 2 times a week, max 3. And you start off slow, you build up to about 6 minutes or 6 cycles. And then eventually a lot of people go all the way up to 12. And what this does, what's so great about HIIT is that it in just 2 weeks, you can improve your cardiovascular health just as much as if you were doing endurance training from 6 to 8 weeks. So it's pretty powerful. So you burn more calories, you burn more fat, you increase your muscle mass faster, and increases your human growth hormone by 450%. So that's pretty amazing. So the higher the HGH is, the slower the aging process. The next one I want to talk about is something called KATA. That's on our next slide. So what this is, it's specialized belts that you wear around your arms, as you see in this picture, and you use it while you're doing light resistance, not heavy resistance. but it causes constriction. What that benefits of that is it increases lactic acid, increased growth hormone, it increases anabolic hormones, which of course would increase your muscle mass, increases your metabolism, fat burning, and also increases nitric oxide. Nitrous oxide is something that when you have that in your body, it makes our blood vessels and our vessels all more elastic, which is healthier, because they age, they basically kind of scar and get more rigid. So that you get quicker results. The next one I'm going to talk about on the next slide is called AllCore. This is something that we use in our office because we have a lot of patients, obviously, with back pain. But this, for some people, that they have a difficult time doing planks because they have shoulder injuries, different things. But you can actually sit in this apparatus, like you see the woman on the left, and then you can see that's my daughter. And then my Aussie Doodle is on the bottom part of that screen, wants to watch my daughter Sheridan. But this can rotate you in that 360-degree plank, and it can take you all the way to zero gravity. So as you watch this, you can see that they're like my daughter Sheridan on the right is not leaning all the way back. She's having to hold herself in that position as the machine rotates you. So you don't have all the stress on your other joints in order to build that, to build those muscles. We have patients that are elite athletes that do this. And then we have people that are not in their 90s that do this safely. The next one I want to talk about on the next slide is power plate. And I know that Pepperdine also has had power plate there for years. And it's whole body vibration. And the cool thing about this is it turns on more muscle fibers. You have to, because it vibrates on 3 different planes of motion, it turns on more muscle fibers by having your brain send all the way signals down to the areas that are being worked because of the vibration that's occurring. So you get more muscle recruitment. So say if you were doing a bicep curl, normal recruitment is usually about 49%, but with power plate, you almost get almost at 99% contraction on all those muscle fibers. So the next slide I want to talk about is, benefits of exercise. So these are ones that you may not hear about as much. So increase NAD, I'm going to talk about that in a moment. We already mentioned nitrous oxide and the benefits. There's a lot more benefits besides vessels, but it increases your insulin sensitivity. So the less insulin output, the healthier you're going to be. If you have that free floating insulin that can't get into the cells, then that's very inflammatory. And also the less insulin, the less belly fat. So we like that. Increased human growth hormone, we've already said that, improves sleep, increases your metabolism, memory, learning, and concentration. So I'm going to talk about NAD now. That's on our next slide here. So they call it NAD, you can see, right? Nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide is a big mouthful, right? So we've talked about exercise and fasting both improve NAD levels. What is it? It's a molecule found in every living cell. The great thing about this is it powers up your mitochondria. And your mitochondria, think about like little mini engines in all of our cells that produce energy. That's ATP converts into energy. So in the past, it's really been difficult to supplement, but now they've done more and more work on this area. So these are a couple of the supplements that we use. In the past, you would have had to do IV infusions that usually take about a couple hours, and they're quite expensive. They're usually run from $1,500 to $2,000 a session. So this is a nice way to be able to get that NAD into your body. All right. The next thing that we have in our office is called a hyperbaric chamber. So you actually can lie in this chamber, and what it is, it's a huge benefit because it's pressurized oxygen that is 3 times greater than you would have. So your lungs are able to gather up more of that oxygen would be possible, even if you were breathing pure oxygen out of a cannulus. So the benefits of this, it helps fight infections. A lot of you know about that, burns, right? But it goes even further. So it stimulates growth factors in our body and increases your stem cells. So I have it listed. You have a 22% increase in telomere length. Telomeres are the length of our DNA, right? They're the tail of our DNA. The longer those telomeres are, the longer we're going to live. And it decreases 37% of senescent cells. Senescent cells, a fancy word just saying they're damaged cells that can harm our bodies. All right. And now I'm going to talk about some supplements next. it's hard not to talk about health and longevity without talking about supporting that immune system, right? Most of us have heard about D3 with K2. K2 is used to help with bone building as we age, but D3 is a huge global effector. I could have an hour lecture on just the benefits and what happens to your body when you're low in D3. But if you're low in D3, the studies are out there that you get sick. The next one we talk about is hydrolyzed collagen. Not all collagens are the same. A lot of you might be taking this, but check and make sure that it's less than 3,000 Dalton weight. Because it becomes more bioavailable. Bioavailable means that your body can absorb it and use it. And collagen is the basic building block for all of our structures in our body. So this is huge on healing and repair. Magnesium, I can go into a whole lecture just on this, but most people are magnesium deficient. And this is an important one, and it even helps us sleep on top of that. Zinc, that's been known for a long time to boost up our immune system. Most people don't know about quercetin or bromelain. A lot of athletes use this because it's anti-inflammatory. Now, there's something that our body can produce, and it's called cytokines. And you probably heard this, a lot of cytokines with the COVID outbreak, right? So it drops those cytokines dramatically by taking quercetin and bromelain, just kicks out those bad inflammatory cytokines. And then the next, and vitamin C, of course, most people are on 1,000 to 1,500 milligrams a day. And I like liposomal C because your body becomes, again, more bioavailable. The other way you can take it is a buffer vitamin C. The next one is hydrogen-rich water. And this is a really cool thing that's been out there for a little bit. This is the one that we use in our office. It has a lot of studies behind it. It increases your telomere length of your DNA, decreases your pain levels, improves your brain metabolism. Of course, it's really great on the outcomes of senior fitness tests. A lot of athletes use this, and they use it for recovery because you produce a lot of muscle byproducts, whether it's pyruvic acid or lactic acid, and this helps to bind up with that. Not only binds up with that, it binds up with something called hydroxyl free radicals. Our body produces free radicals for different reasons, but this really is awesome to bind up with that. Most of you, or some of you, may not have heard what functional medicine, or another name for it is functional nutrition. These are doctors that specialize in this. And I always think it's very important for women to be proactive in their health. And it's important to get that evaluation and, at least a yearly blood test. We can detect any issues that might be occurring. Now, and it's important that your doctor knows how to read these tests, but also knows what tests to run if you're having any issues. Another thing we use in our office is a heart rate variability test. And that is really a gold standard, not just to measure how variable your heart is. The more variable it is, of course, the healthier you are, the longer you're going to live. But also, are you in sympathetic dominance? Flight or fight, most of you know that term, right? There's a lion chasing you, and that lion never stops, and it's chasing you 24/7. So if that's the case, we've got to get someone out from being stuck and go to take them into parasympathetics, where your body heals, rests, digests, and repairs. So that's huge. The next one we want to do is a heavy metal test. Heavy metal test is something that we use because your body can't detoxify very well if that's in your system, and we need to get those out. Because if you don't get them out, it's only a matter of time before you get sick, right? Some of the energetic biohacks that we use are really cool. So we talked about oxygen. Oxygen is a way we get energy. Sun, right? All these different modalities. That's one easy one is free sun, but the frequency specific microcurrent increases increases ATP production by about 500% in the areas that we treat. Pulse electromagnetic frequency, some of you might know it as grounding. This is where the energy that we get from the earth, but we can kind of cheat that energy in there to get more energy, because if we don't have enough energy to heal and repair, then we won't. So this is ways to kind of do a biohack in there. Infrared light is wonderful, also infrared saunas. So this is something that's cool, is that this is before, if you look to the left, it looks like a bunch of coins stacked on top of each other. And that's your red blood cells. They shouldn't be stacked like that because the red blood cell's job is to carry oxygen to all the tissues in your body. And that's not a healthy looking blood sample. You look to the right of that, and this is 10 minutes after the pulsed electromagnetic frequency, and you can see that the red blood cells have a higher voltage, and the higher the voltage on that, the more they repel each other and able to carry that oxygen to the places that your body needs. It's able to do its job. This is kind of cool. This is what's possible in reversing aging. This is we're a group of doctors called the Da Vinci 50, and he's in our group that are really top-notch doctors that are looking at how we look at our body as far as anti-aging. But he does something different. It's called guided stem cell therapy. Has embryonic stem cells that are attracted to a specific light, and he's able to reverse this age with each treatment on average of about 3 years. How they determine that is that a separate company called True Diagnostics that look at 500,000 different biomarkers afterwards. And the other doctor that we work with too does kind of a cool anti-aging drug cocktail using metformin, DHEA, and growth hormone. So he's doing an ongoing research program with that. And he's also able to reverse 3 years with each year. So it's pretty amazing. So that's all I have for you. I might have gotten over, I apologize, but thank you for having me.
We talked about women and anti-aging. And we're going to talk about relationships. And here's what we're going to talk about: money. So I think we have a poll for all of you in the audience. If you're willing to answer a short question, Vanessa's going to put up a poll. And this is a question that we asked earlier this year. The firm that I manage, Zuma Wealth, ran a survey earlier this year of affluent and accomplished women, and we did this over 4 generations. And the report overall surveyed women on their attitudes and their motivations and their concerns around wealth and investing. And, you know, as Vanessa was kind enough to say earlier, I've managed billions of dollars for hundreds of people in up and down markets over the past 25 years. And so I thought I knew it all. And this poll is coming in somewhat similar to what our survey showed. But the biggest surprise to me from the survey, and again, this is a surprise, I thought this was different, is that the large majority of women, even very educated women, very affluent women across the United States, they lack confidence in their ability to manage their wealth and their ability to manage their investments. And, you know, I see this a little bit in this poll also. So I bring this up in case you feel not so confident about investing or only somewhat confident. You're not alone. And what we found in our survey was that we had 12% in our survey. We're not getting any today, but it's a smaller group. Only 12% felt very confident. And nearly 20% in our survey said they're not at all confident. So at least we have a little bit more, you know, sense of confidence here. That's good. You're going to learn some more that'll hopefully help you feel even better about that. So we'll move to the next slide. We surveyed women in our survey across 4 major generations, and we're going to have one more poll for you. This will be the last one you have to answer, and you don't have to if you don't want to, but we talked with women across 4 major generations, and we found that there are money concerns and challenges that seem to be prevalent by generation. So there's a lot of copy here, so I'll hit some highlights for you. And at the same time, you can answer the poll question. If you're a silent generation, you're born before 1945. The boomers are 1946 to 1964. Gen X is 1965 to 1980, and millennials are 1981 to 1996. So again, we found certain money challenges and concerns that I think you will find interesting. What we found is that the silent generation, that's born before 1945 and earlier, they generally handle their money with prudence and with discretion. And so this generation is typically determined and resilient. We also spoke with boomers who are at or in retirement. Maybe this is you. You're relying on your savings and your investments to fund your retirement. You're going to live longer than the traditional rule book used to say you're going to live, and how much money you can take out of your retirement. So you have to plan differently than we have in the past. I have a boomer couple right now. They have 2 homes, and they want to keep 2 homes. They want to travel. They want to live comfortably and easily, and they don't want to work. Okay, we can do all that. They're going to live longer, though, so we want to have a plan with that, and you don't want to just sort of wing it. I guess is the point of that. Gen X typically still working, but they're just not going to have enough money for retirement. And the millennials that we've worked with historically tend to be the children of the boomer clients that we have. The key here with boomers is they need to learn more about saving and investing and how important that can be for their future. This is the reason why I've taken such a personal interest in helping women with their wealth. It has everything to do with a number of facts. So let me rattle off a few for you. And you can see them on this slide also. But the first thing that is sort of unique recently is what has been called the sandwich generation. And this is someone who has a parent that is over 65 and still has dependent children. So for example, we have a client who's 54. She recently remarried after a divorce. She's helping her 87-year-old parents. And she also has a daughter in college that she's financially supporting. And she works full time. So this sandwich generation is something many women are facing, that is not just financial challenges, but it's also emotional ones and time. A second big fact that every woman should know is this next one, which is somewhat sobering. Well, the conclusion is, so most women marry, about half of women marry someone that's 2 years or more older than them. And they also tend to have women tend to have a longer life expectancy than their spouse. And the sobering fact is that more than half of women over the age of 75 are widowed. And they find themselves in a situation where they need to manage their finance and their investments on their own. Here's another example for you. When my mother's on this call, when my mother's father passed quite a long time ago now, he had built up a large stock portfolio. He was really interested in the stock market. He would research stocks, study them, and buy them and hold them for decades. And he left this portfolio to my grandmother. And when he passed, she didn't really know what to do with that. And she got taken advantage of, in my view. They sold some stocks. It triggered some taxes, and she just didn't know the right questions to ask or what to do. And plus she was, lost the love of her life that she'd been married to for over 50 years. So I want you to just be aware that even if you're not interested in money and investing, which I think many of you maybe are, you might need to handle it at some point. You want to at least be able to know how to choose someone that can help you, because there's so much information out there. There's also statistics about divorce, that happens to a lot of women. And so the point of this is why I want to help women a lot, is that there will be a time for most women where they are responsible solely for their wealth and for their investments. Another interesting thing that we found from our survey is that it's an absolute myth that women are not interested in learning about money and investments. It's a myth. That's what we found. 78% of the women in our studies said they are not as knowledgeable as investing as they would like to be. That means, interpretation is that maybe they feel unprepared or uncomfortable or intimidated, but still interested in learning more. So let's go to the next slide. And I think the reason why it can be so hard to learn about money is it can be a little bit like food, right? When it comes to food, we don't track our intake. When it comes to money and investing, we don't track our spending. Or with food, we eat more than we know. And with money, we spend more than we know. With food, it can be that we've tried the latest fad. And with investing, we're not investing, but actually gambling by, or over worrying that we're going to lose too much money. Finally, with food, there can be a lot of advice and research out there. And same with money. There are so many people that claim to be experts that deliver so many different points of view. It can be very challenging to figure out who to listen to, who to trust, who to ask questions of, and rely on their answers. And I think that is one of the biggest reasons that people get confused. The industry makes things very over complex. There's a lot of experts out there providing their points of view, and a lot of it is just noise, and it can be difficult to separate that from the facts. So what does this mean for you You want to feel financially empowered. The problem is typically, and many people, women and especially, but also the guys, can feel overwhelmed. They can feel overlooked or underserved in the financial industry. And I understand that. So let's move to the next slide and talk about what to do and what to not do in a couple of different areas. These are general rules of thumb. Your situation is unique. These are not hard and fast rules, but these are general tips that you should know. I love that word biohacks that Lori was using. These are money hacks. So do this, not that. We're going to talk about taxes, Social Security, relationships briefly, and if we have time, how to select a guide. So first and foremost, fund a Roth IRA if you're eligible for this. If you don't know what a Roth IRA is, it is funded with your after-tax dollars, and it's for retirement. And when you take it out, you don't pay any taxes on it. So it grows and grows and grows. After-tax dollars give you a great deal because you're investing now, and then you don't pay the taxes when you take it out. It can be invested in anything you want, in stocks and ETFs and mutual funds, anything. So a Roth IRA is simply one of the best deals I've found out there for long-term investing. Not everyone's eligible, but a lot of people are. So take what works for you out of this. If you get only one thing, I think that will be helpful for you. Number two is, if you're in a different generation, you're starting to take money out of your portfolio, make sure that your withdrawal strategy factors in taxes. Once you start drawing down from your non-retirement taxes, non-retirement accounts, think about taking all those distributions, your RMDs, in cash rather than reinvesting them, so you don't end up paying the taxes twice. This is something that requires putting some pencils to paper to see if it makes sense for you. But a strategy like this one is one way that I work with clients to make sure they're keeping as much money in their pockets as possible. So be very thoughtful in your withdrawal strategy once you're taking money out. Number three is a little bit more, requires some thought, but picking tax efficient methods like municipal bonds, for example, is one method to maximize your after-tax returns. But you also want to put that in the right type of account. At the highest level, we call this asset location, which is just a way to minimize taxes by dividing your assets into taxable and non-taxable accounts, but looking at the whole picture holistically. So asset location is another way to keep more of your money in your own pocket. Have you heard of donor advised funds? If you are charitably inclined, but you're not sure yet where you want to put that money or when you want to distribute it, you can set up what's called a donor advised fund. We do this a lot with our clients. We just finished doing one for a client. She has money. She wants to donate a certain amount of it. She wants the tax deduction, but she's not sure where she wants to put it. It's a lot of money. She wants to make a thoughtful decision. Well, we set up a donor advised fund, invested it, and then she can decide who and how much that money goes to in the future, but she gets the tax deduction this year. Finally, last tip, if you have an investment advisor, you're paying them investment fees, be sure to pay those. Make sure your advisor is paying those out of your tax deferred accounts. Investment management fees are no longer tax deductible. So if you have a taxable account and a tax deferred account with your advisor, they can take all your fees out of the tax deferred account, and you're essentially not incurring taxes or early withdrawal policies and penalties, and it's another tax beneficial way to just manage your money. For many Americans, Social Security can be their biggest retirement asset. For many, it's not. But the various mistakes people make when managing their Social Security benefits can cost them. You worked hard for decades. You accumulated Social Security retirement benefits. Make sure you optimize how you receive that benefit. It's an essential part of anyone's retirement plan. So here are some of the biggest mistakes that I've seen when it comes to maximizing your Social Security benefit. Don't do these, do the opposite. And the do this, don't do that. The first mistake, and again, I want to be very careful to say these are general rules of thumb, and in any situation, there can be different circumstances. However, let's use this as a starting point. Do not take your Social Security too early. You can take it as early as 62. As a general rule, don't do that. The offer of money from the government each month, it can be just too much for many Americans to resist. But if you claim it too early, that can dramatically impact how much you collect over your lifetime. We just finished a phone call with someone who's like, I just turned 62, I'm claiming in January. And we walked through the math. And after a while, he was like, well, I'm not sure why I want to do that. I just want the money, but that doesn't always make sense because you're going to give up a lot if you take too early without thinking about it. Mistake number 2 is filing too early and still working. And in fact, in the same example of this person we were speaking with, just yesterday, who wants to file for Social Security, he's still working and he's collecting an income. Well, the government is like, you know what, we're not going to give you quite as much because you're still making money over here. It's just the rules. Nothing you can do to change them. So you want to be really careful if you file early and you're still working. What is that going to mean financially? This next one is maximizing your survivor benefits. So I get it. When you become a widow, or you become a widower, the last thing you want to think about is maximizing your Social Security benefits. But what is often overlooked by many widows is that you can file earlier. You can file for survivor benefits before 62 at age 60. And if you take that survivor benefit and you have your own benefit, you can weigh both of those. You can defer one, claim the other. And this is a strategy that not many people are aware of, not many widows, and they're not really thinking about that in that challenging time. But you can take a survivor benefit, allow your own benefits to grow until you reach the age of 70, the maximum level, and then switch to the higher benefit. And it's a strategy that many are not even aware of. So they fail to use it, and that leaves thousands and thousands of dollars on the table. A fourth, do this, not that, in Social Security is getting divorced too soon or remarrying. I'm not giving more marriage or divorce advice here. I just want you to be aware of the facts, which is that if you divorce and you've been married for over 10 years, you're entitled to claim a Social Security spousal benefit. You don't have to tell your ex-spouse. It does not impact them at all financially. If you remarry, you give that up. So I'm not, again, giving any advice. I just want you to be aware, put pen to paper when you're making decisions around your Social Security. And finally, taxes. What many people don't realize, or if they forget, is that you have to pay taxes on your Social Security. Government pays you money, got to pay them back, but you have to pay taxes. It's not just the number that they put on your statement. It's you're going to have to pay taxes on that amount. So we've talked about taxes. We've talked about Social Security. I'm going to briefly touch on relationships and money, but Marina is really going to be the expert on relationships in general. But I felt like it was important to at least bring up this topic because everyone knows about taxes and Social Security, but with relationships and money, it can get a lot stickier. One of the number one challenges that couples face, you probably know this, is around money and how we respond to money issues and manage money issues can make or break a relationship. There is no romance without finance, as my dad has frequently said over my lifetime. So first, let's talk about a marriage or a committed relationship. Many people avoid talking about money because it can be awkward. It can feel uncomfortable. It's very important to make sure that you and your partner are aligned. Have the conversations anyways. It often helps to have an outside, agnostic, unbiased financial advisor that can give advice and present it in a kind of a calm environment. But have the conversations. Don't wait till it's at a breaking point. Kids are another big category. The trade-offs that I often get questions around are on education, saving for retirement, big ticket items like weddings. Little pen to paper can be extremely helpful in your decision making. So make sure that you're doing that also. And then the final bullet I put on here is you. This is a piece of advice that my own mother, who's on this call, rightfully made sure I heard, which was have at least one bank account with your name on it and only your name. Put money into that account, build up the balance over time. Having your own money is emotionally empowering, it's pragmatic, and it's necessary. So make sure in your relationship with you that you have your own bank account. I wanted to give you a couple of resources if you wanted to read on your own. This middle one in particular would be my top choice recommendation. It's called the Charles Schwab Guide to Finances After 50. And it just gives great question and answer format for every single thing you could possibly think of. And it's a great thing to have on your bookshelf, and it's a great thing to peruse. So if you want to learn a little bit more, I would suggest that. And with that, I am going to turn my time over to Marina Edelman.
I wanted to actually start off with saying how to find a marriage therapist, because statistically speaking, most of us will see a counselor at any point. One of the things that COVID did was made it less taboo. But seeing someone for anxiety or depression is a little bit different than asking someone for a couples counselor. And that's something that I get asked actually a lot. I would suggest, one, to make sure that they have some sort of couples focused training. There's Gottman method, which is amazing. Emotional focus therapy is really great. There's Imago. Those are the top three. There are some other ones. We don't actually learn how to do relationship counseling in school. They focus a lot on emotions like mood disorder, stress, and so on, family systems, but really not couples. So when I went into this, I looked to see if I'm going to work with couples, I need to educate myself. So when you're looking for someone, definitely make sure they have that. With that said, the reason I selected Gottman is his studies are one of the few that studied what makes couples masters and disasters. And I wanted to go over 7 principles of marriage that he's been able to identify that really make couples be successful. They say there's no manual. I don't like self-help books generally, but I love this book, and it is a manual. If you do this, you will be fulfilled in your marriage. I can't say how happy, but you will be fulfilled. But before we go into his 7 principles, I wanted to talk about pillars of marriage. And there's 5 of them, and they're all equally important. I'm not listing them in any specific order, but there's we are married or in a committed relationship in the following ways: socially, emotionally, financially, sexually, and physically. Children are actually not part of a marriage. We can be married with no children. We could be co-parents and not be married, which is why they're not there. But all 5 of those, if you imagine like a pillar, needs to be reinforced and stable. Now, how to do that is the tricky part. Gottman outlined 7 principles that he said make couples successful. One thing is love maps. That's how he calls them, which is basically knowing what each partner's day looks like. There's something interesting that his studies showed that couples that have the same schedule, like get up at the same time, go to sleep at the same time, floss their teeth, are actually happier. And it's because their nervous system is aligned. When you meet someone and you fall in love, like you naturally just want to hold their hand and be near them. And somewhere when we fight and have friction, we kind of pull apart. So having a similar rhythm helps couples. The other thing is fondness and admiration. If we have children or a pet, we're so much into like, oh my gosh, you're so cute and I love you so much. But we stop doing that with our partners. We kind of stop giving them compliments, or they're supposed to, I don't know, take the trash out or walk the dog. And really sharing why you admire them would really benefit the relationship. Turning towards or away or against is something that Gottman's research actually had the most publicity over. So what it looks like is like this. You and I are sitting on the couch and we're friends and we're watching TV, and I look down on my phone and say, huh. Now you could either be like upset at me for not watching the show with me, which is turning against me. You could ignore me, Or you can pause the TV and say, and ask me, why am I hucking? So those kind of passive bids for attention and how we respond can dramatically, like I can't overemphasize it enough, increase satisfaction with your relationship. And I don't know how much of us do that enough, like pay attention to those passive bids for attention. We're so used to saying kind of triggering things like we have to talk. And then everyone is on like high alert for like, oh my gosh, what's going to be said now? So that would be a big one. The next one is influence versus compromise. Compromise, you kind of keep track, even though you don't think you're doing it. Influence is hearing what your partner's emotional needs are and voluntarily giving that to them. Soft versus harsh startups, how we start a conversation can dictate happiness. All of us have gridlock situations if we're in a long-term relationship. Figuring out how to maneuver around them would really benefit so that the same argument isn't coming up over and over again. And the last thing is creating shared meanings, meaning go and do something different, become beekeepers together, do something that is really unique to you as a couple that you can then reflect on. The top reasons for divorce is, Terry was right, one of them is money. The other one that comes up a lot is addiction, infidelity. So infidelity is kind of a tricky subject. Esther Perel, I don't know if anybody has ever heard of her, but she's written some amazing books. And you can definitely overcome an affair. And not only can you overcome it, you actually can be a stronger couple after that. But for that to happen, it's almost like, think of it as like an emergency room situation. There's a car accident, a body is laying there. How you move the body in is really important to what happens to your recovery. Couples, marriages are kind of like that. That's a huge breach. There's also one of the things that I do is I do financial therapy, kind of bringing in my money background. And some of the infidelities that I've seen are actually financial infidelities. And those are just as emotionally painful and damaging to a couple as sexual infidelities. The other one is inability to deal with life stressors that I see a lot. Like a couple is fine, and then there will be a stressor. Children are seen as a parasite actually on a couple because they don't really give much. They're more in the getting stage, especially newborns. But health and job and children, those are all major stressors. And if you can reflect on how you communicate, which is the biggest thing. I see a couple, they're like, oh, we have communication problems. And then I have to peel away layers to figure out what that really means. And a lot of times they don't hear each other. So Imago has this approach that seems really awkward, but is super effective. You literally validate what the other person says. So when a couple comes in and they'll say to me like, I can't validate because it's not right what he or she is saying. Validation just means that you're mimicking what you heard is correct. Because I constantly have people like cross speaking, even with me, like sometimes I'll slow down the conversations and I'll just ask them to validate me. We can't input and output information at the same time. So a lot of us are preparing a response when we're listening. And so we're actually responding to something that we think they're going to say. So to deal with life stressors, you need to validate by summarizing what you heard your partner say, and that will help that process. And the last one, which is much more, I think, so I'm in Westlake Village. This area is kind of like a bedroom community and so on, but this is what I see a lot is lifestyle choices, whether it's their fitness levels, the type of life that they want. Do they want to live in the mountains or in the city? Do they want to be organic or not? Do they want to entertain or not? So those lifestyle choices, actually, I'm seeing becoming bigger, maybe hindrances to life satisfaction. And silver divorce is actually really, really big. So kind of normal, people are going to wait till their kids are out of the house and then consider divorce. And I think a lot of them can be prevented, or I've worked with couples who come in maybe to do some closure work or what's called discernment counseling. And they realize they're not as different if they're able to implement, I keep going back to this, these 7 principles of marriage. Like we talk about biohacks, money hacks. This is a marriage hack or committed relationship hack. Just do this and fulfilled marriage will be yours. I don't know how else, even if I never see you or see my clients, I'll say to them the first consultation, just listen to this audiobook, talk about it, and just do it. There's something called love languages, which a lot of people have heard about. And if you haven't, I would strongly encourage you to just go online, type in 5 love languages, take an online quiz. You'll figure out what love language you are, your partner, and speak their love language. Don't speak yours to them, but speak theirs and see what happens. And last is there's something called attachment theory, which I can't necessarily go into because it's too extensive. But there's 3 types. There's withdrawn, anxious, or disorganized, and it's how we primarily attach. That is really important to understand. There's a really great book called Attached to understand who you are and who your partner is, and to manage your attachment and not put it onto your partner. That concludes my portion.
Marina, we'll start with you in the discussion of validation. If you could give us maybe an example of maybe a small conversation where you're playing both roles, so we can kind of see how that might be played out.
This comes up so frequently. I see about, 8, 9 clients a day, and I do this at least twice a day. So validation sounds like this. I'm really angry that you are rude to my parents, you disappear, and when they come over, and that really upsets me. Before that, my alter ego response to that, a validation sounds something like this. I hear you, I get it, I understand why you're angry and you perceive me being rude to your parents. That makes sense to me. That doesn't mean you're admitting to being rude, which is a huge, huge difference. This is oh my gosh, if I could only do one thing, that would be my presentation on that. You're not accepting responsibility. You are not apologizing. You are just literally absorbing information.
Thank you. Yes, I've heard the notion that validation is not agreement. So I think that comes into play, is what you said. Thank you for clarifying that. Additional question on Social Security, since we have many women here that are of the different generations, silent all the way down to millennials and then some. I know you had mentioned that Zuma Wealth has done a lot of research and you post that on your website about the market, et cetera. If you would maybe share your personal opinion about Social Security availability for those of the younger generation, what is the consensus of how long that's going to be around for lifetimes?
Yeah, great question that I feel like is debated on a daily basis. It was one of the biggest things that came up with millennials. It was it's just not going to be around. I'm not even going to think that I'm ever going to get it. And for a lot of people, they want to take Social Security as soon as they can, even older generation closer to 62, because they're this thing's not going to be around. I'm going to take mine now. I was just on a panel yesterday with an expert on Social Security, and that same exact question came up. And the fundamental belief is that the government has promised that they're going to do this and they're going to figure out a way to fund it, and that it is sort of something that cannot be taken away in the United States. And so to the extent you have to assign a probability, whether it's going to be around or not, the probability is high that it will be. So that would be how I answer that and how I think that most people should take a look at it.
That makes sense. So TBD, and also more encouragement to fund an IRA. To have many.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, exactly. Get a Roth IRA, fund anything you can. It's a tax deferred account.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'm going to add Lori into the spotlight because a question came in on the hydrogen-rich water. You had mentioned that and added a an image. So it looked like that was in pill form. If you could kind of expand on what that is, how we take that.
Different forms of hydrogen. The one that we use is in a tablet. It's easy to do. You start off with one tablet. You start slow because it will cause detoxification symptoms, meaning that as you start to release, pull on some of those free radicals, you can feel like detox symptoms are, kind of feeling like almost like flu-like symptoms. So you start slow. Usually one tablet, you drop it in about 6 ounces of water and it dissolves. And once it stops fizzing, then you drink it down. There's other ones that are in capsule form, but this is the one that I find the most beneficial. And I have people building up to 3 tablets like that in the morning. And depending on what's going on with someone we treat with a lot of, severe autoimmunes, we might be doing that a couple times a day. And again, it just binds up to those hydroxyl free radicals.
There was a question about the PEMF, and I think what they understood that to be an electronic version of grounding or mimicking grounding. So if you could kind of
Exactly.
Outside and standing in your grass in your backyard versus something that maybe you can do inside.
Yes, we get energy from the earth, on the beach, standing in the grass, gardening, getting our hands in there, right? And so that's natural energy we get from the earth, and we're not getting the same amount. So we have to figure out different ways to get that in your body. And they make grounding mats. They make mats that you can sleep on. There's different companies that do that. One is QRS. We use a different one in the office that's a little bit stronger. There's ones called Beamers. There's different ones out there that are great.
Fantastic, thank you. And if all else fails, then take the day and go to the beach. So I love that. I love that hack. So
that's a great hack.
Yeah. Marina sends her regards. She has to sign off because she has a client that is coming in. But I will hand it back to both Terry and Lori for just one more comment before we wrap up.
Oh, gosh, yeah. I guess just to wrap up, thank you everyone for your time. Happy Veterans Day. If you have any questions about money and investing, don't hesitate. You've learned a little bit. You can ask the right questions, and I hope you take charge. That's it.
Great. And I know I threw a lot of information out there for you guys. So again, if you have, just like Tara, if you have any questions or some clarification, I'm happy to help with that too.